In the summer of 1789, the streets of Paris were not filled with revolutionaries chasing abstract ideals. They were filled with hungry, exhausted people watching their economy collapse in slow motion when the Bastille fell. It wasn't just a symbol of tyranny coming down. It was the financial system of an entire nation imploding under its own weight. What cracked first was not the crown. It was the ledger. For decades, France carried itself like an eternal empire silk. Gold, powdered wigs, and royal proclamations about divine authority. But beneath the glittering halls of Versailles, the numbers simply didn't add up. France wasn't just mismanaged, it was financially rotting from the inside. Before the revolution was a political story, it was an economic disaster. Let's step back to the 18th century. France was huge, wealthy, and ambitious, ruling a population nearing 30 million. But it had one fatal flaw. Its financial organs were centuries out of date. While Britain modernized, creating the Bank of England and using a sophisticated bond market to finance wars, France clung to medieval systems. Taxes weren't collected by the state but outsourced to private tax farmers, who treated peasants like human ATMs. The aristocracy bought government offices like shares in a company, then used those offices to enrich themselves. The system rewarded privilege, not competence. So while the elites feasted, the foundations weakened. Then came the wars. The War of Austrian Succession, the 7 Years' War, and most of all, France's decision to help the American colonies fight Britain. A decision driven by revenge, not strategy. Supporting the American Revolution wasn't a bold political move. It was economic self-harm. France borrowed over 1 billion livres to finance it. Interest payments alone ate more than half the crown. Esse annuel income. Think of running a business where every coin you earn immediately disappears into debt service, and you still need to borrow more just to keep the lights on. Meanwhile, ordinary people lived on the edge. The nobility and the clergy, who made up a tiny fraction of the population, were exempt from most taxes. The burden fell on the Third Estate. Farmers, workers, merchants, everyone else. Bread consumed up to 70% of a laborer's daily income. And when the weather turned, harvests failed, and grain prices doubled. Survival became a daily struggle. The riots of 1789 were about bread before they were about liberty. Reformers tried to save the system. Turgot pushed for tax equality and modernization. The nobles blocked him. Necker tried to make the finances transparent. His honesty triggered panic. Each minister warned Louis XVI that the monarchy was running out of time. None were allowed to fix the root cause: privilege. By 1788, France couldn't secure normal loans. Creditors demanded insane interest or refused to lend. Contractors went unpaid. Soldiers missed salaries. That some-year grain shortages caused prices to skyrocket. Desperate, Louis XVI summoned the Estates General in 1789, the first time in 150 years. It was supposed to solve the fiscal crisis instead. It unleashed a political earthquake. The commoners realized that the crisis wasn't misfortune. It was design. A system built to enrich elites had finally collapsed on top of everyone else. When the Third Estate declared itself the National Assembly, the monarchy's days were numbered. And when the Bastille fell, it fell because the financial structure that held France together had already snapped. But that was only the beginning. The new revolutionary government inherited the wreckage. Empty reserves, soaring debts, riots, and a nation demanding both justice and bread. Idealism couldn't pay soldiers or restock granaries. The revolution needed money. Fast. So in 1790 came what looked like a brilliant idea: confiscate the vast lands of the Catholic Church and use them to back a new form of currency, called as. For a moment, confidence returned. Paper money, backed by real land, flowed into circulation. France had wealth and land but lacked liquidity. Problem solved, or so it said. But once governments discover they can print their own lifeline, restraint disappears. The first issue of assignats was reasonable. The next was larger. Soon, issues multiplied beyond the value of the land. By 1792, billions of livres in paper money were circulating. Inflation accelerated. By 1793, assignats had lost most of their value. By 1795, they were nearly worthless. People needed piles of notes to buy a loaf of bread. Farmers refused to sell grain. Shops rejected the currency. Trust evaporated. To make things worse, Britain and other enemies began counterfeiting assignats by the ton, flooding the French economy with fake money and accelerating the collapse. The revolution had tried to solve a crisis of debt with a printing press. Instead, it created hyperinflation. Wages collapsed. Savings vanished overnight. Government workers were paid in paper that lost value before they reached home. Markets descended into chaos. The government tried price controls, which only birthed black markets and shortages. And as the economy spiraled, fear turned to paranoia. Robespierre and the radical factions declared anyone who hoarded food or questioned a currency an enemy of the state. Thousands died because they opposed the revolution, but because they opposed worthless money. The guillotine became an economic tool. By 1796, assignats were abandoned. A new paper money, the mandat, collapsed just as quickly. France stumbled from one currency disaster to the next. What had begun as a fight for justice had turned into financial devastation. And from that chaos emerged a young general who promised order, stability, and strength. Napoleon understood what the revolutionaries didn't. Ideals don't matter without a functioning financial system. In 1800, he founded the Bank of France, a centralized institution designed to restore trust in currency and credit. France finally had the backbone it lacked for a century. The lesson is clear. No revolution, no government, no nation survives without financial stability. France collapsed because it borrowed recklessly, taxed unfairly, and printed desperately. And when people lost trust in money itself, the entire system crumbled. History may not repeat, but it draws familiar shapes. We've seen the same pattern in Weimar Germany, in Zimbabwe, in the 2008 crisis, in the Eurozone, debt meltdown, and even in modern debates about national debt and inflation. When governments rely on printing instead of reform, when elites escape burdens that fall on everyone else, when money loses credibility, collapse follows. The French Revolution is a warning disguised as history. It tells us that financial literacy isn't optional. It's survival. Real wealth isn't paper. It's assets, resilience, and knowledge that outlasts political cycles. The revolution wasn't just about liberty. It was about debt, inflation, and bread, the economics of ordinary survival. And if you think today's world is too advanced to repeat the same mistakes, so did the Bourbons. If this opened your eyes, hit subscribe. History has the answers. I'll show you where to look.